So we're just going to take a quick look at one of the problem-solving questions in 4J. This is question number 12 in the 3rd edition. If you are using the 2nd edition book, your question number may be a little different. So we're looking for the difference in times in this question. Right, arriving at school at 8:09, leaving at 3:37. This question is asking basically what's the difference between those two. What you want to make sure you don't do is please do not just put these numbers in a calculator and do a subtraction. We are looking for a difference, which is what the subtraction operation calculates, but we have AM and PM here, and we also have a calculator which works in metric, by which I mean you go to, in your places, once you get to 9 in your ones, we then go into our tens. When you can get up to 9, then we go into our hundreds once you get up to 9 in your tens. But time doesn't work like that, right? Yes, for our minutes, we get up to 9 in the ones before we go to the tens of minutes, but we can only go up to 59 minutes before we add into our hours column. All right, and then in this one, we can only get up to 2 before we go, we have to start thinking about, are we in AM, PM, 24 hours? So it gets a little bit more complicated. So what we need to do, there are 2 ways you can do this. Firstly, I could convert this to 24-hour time. So this is now 08:09, excuse me, and this is now 15:37. Because my minutes are greater in this in the PM than they are in the AM, so my later time has more minutes, you can actually do a subtraction here and you would get the right answer. So what do I mean? You could go 15:37, subtract 8:09, right, and you would get 15 minus 8, 7. You would get 728, and that actually does work out. That's the correct answer for this question. But well, let's just imagine what would happen if this was instead 3:09 subtract 8:37. What would happen then? Well, this would become 4, 10, 9, 19, 8, 9 minus 3, 6, and you can see something's already gone wrong. We now get 668. You know we can't have 68 minutes before we have to start adding numbers here. And you could go, oh, well, why don't you just take this as being, it's just 7 hours and 8 minutes, right? 68 minutes, that's an hour and 8. So we could do 7 and 08. Right, but that's actually not the correct answer in this question. Okay, the difference between 8:37 and 3:09 is not 7 hours and 8 minutes. Right, so how else could we do this? Right, remember, this only works if your second time minutes are more than your earlier time minutes. So it's really complicated. It's best to avoid that. What I suggest doing is start with the earlier time and count up in whole hours for as long as you can. So we can go 8:09. Right, we can then go to 9:09 is 1 hour. 10:09. I should be writing in the colon for all these, is another hour. Right. You'll tend to find some patterns. For example, we know that from 8:09 to 12:09 is 4 hours. And then from 12 to 3, let's keep it in AM and PM. So this is now 3:37. Sorry, 3:09 PM is another 3 hours. So to get from 8:09 to 3:09, we have a total of 7 hours. Then we can find out, okay, how many more minutes do I need to add? So how do I get from 9 minutes to 37 minutes? Then you can do 37 minus 9 is equal to 28 minutes. So it's 7 hours and 28 minutes. Okay? So try and start to remember the differences from 12. So between 8 and 12 is 4 hours, between 6 and 12 is 6 hours. 12 and 3 is 3 hours. 12 and 6 is another 6 hours, for example. So let's take a look at what happens, or how you could use this to solve the problem if your minutes were a little different. So let's go back to that example where instead of having this, I had 8:37, let's say. 8:37 to 3 until 3:09 p.m. So let's go from 8:37 a.m. to 2:37 p.m. 8 to 12 is 4 hours, plus another 2 gets me a total of 6 hours. So we have 6 hours represented here. Then we can look at, okay, how do I get from 2:37 to 3:09? What's the difference between those? Okay, so we now need to take a little bit of time to interpret what's going on here. If I add another 23 minutes, I'm now at 60. Okay, so what's the difference between this number and 60? Well, I need to add 23 minutes to get to the nearest hour. Then I need to add another 9 minutes to get from 3 o'clock even to 3:09. So we have to add a total of 32 minutes. So the difference between 8:37 and 8:37 and 3:09 is 6 hours and 32 minutes, right? Which you should write as 6 hours and 32 minutes. But that's my imaginary question. The actual question you're doing is this one up here, and that answer is 7 hours and 28 minutes. Okay, one more question from the end of the problem solving section, or near the end of the problem solving section, is question 15. So we have a doctor who earns $180,000. It's pretty awesome, in working 40 weeks per year, 5 days in each of those weeks, 10 hours in each of those days. They're working hard for their money. What does a doctor earn in each of these time periods? So I'm only doing half of them. There are additional ones in the question. So per day, how do we break this down? Well, I now need to find in how many days total does this doctor work? I know that he or she works 40 weeks per year, and each of those weeks has 5 days. So how many days total? So number of days equals 40 weeks. Each of those have 5 days. So that gives me 200 days total. So I want to know how much per day, so I'm going to divide my 180,000 per day, which is divided by 200. I can cancel out some of these zeros. So I now have 1,800 divided by 2. Here. All right, and halving, hopefully you can do in your head. That'll be 900. If you can't, it's 1,800 divided by 2. 2 goes into 1 0 times, 2 goes into 18 9 times, and then we add the zeros on the end. Okay? So then we can look at per hour. So we now need to figure out how many hours total. Well, we can bring in our number of days over here, because in each of those days, our doctor is working 10 hours. So I need to multiply 200 by 10. Each of these days contains 10 hours, so I have 200 groups of 10 hours, which gives me an extra 0 on the end, so 2,000 hours. I now want to know how much this doctor earns per hour, so I divide my total number of dollars by my 2,000 hours. Note that I'm just trying to keep my units lined up here as best as I can. Once again, we can cancel out these zeros. I now have 180 divided by 2, which we can go straight to being 90, or again, you can do 2 into 180, 2 goes into 0, 1 0 times, 18, 9 times, and add the 0 on at the end. All right, so this is $90 an hour or $900 per day. All right, so that's how you solve those two questions.